popped up on your screen. Great. Cool. Thank you. Awesome. It sounds like we got folks from all across the state.
I saw
Uh,
Georgia there.
oh yeah, wow.
Hmm.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We have a wonderful presentation today. Really happy to be here. We're just 1 minute after. I think I'm just going to go ahead and kick things off. So my name is Jane Pollock. I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager with the Florida Trail Association. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Florida Trail in case this is your first time interacting with us. And then we'll hear from Carl Byers, who's an FTA board member, a licensed nurse practitioner, and he's going to be speaking about backcountry first aid and sharing lots of practical tips for staying safe on the trail. So without further ado, let's talk about the Florida Trail a little bit. So for those of you who may not be familiar, the Florida National Scenic Trail, better known simply as just the Florida Trail, stretches for about 1,500 miles across the state of Florida. It starts at, depending on which way you look at it, Gulf Islands National Seashore near Pensacola and ends in the Everglades at Big Cypress National Preserve. And along the way, you'll see those orange blazes that you see on the trees there. That will lead hikers through the Florida Trail, through some of the most diverse and unique landscapes that the state has to offer. Lots of special places that the Florida Trail passes through, from oak hammocks and pine flatwoods to the scrub in Central Florida, rolling hills in the north. The Florida Trail just highlights everything that makes Florida so special. So here's just a quick overview map of the Florida Trail. As you can see, it connects national forests, state parks, wildlife management areas, national park lands, and even some private and military lands that we have partnerships with. And each year, an estimated over 400,000 people set foot on the Florida Trail. And that data comes from a partnership that we have with UF. They have some trail counters out on the trail. And that's wonderful to see so many folks using the trail. If you scan that code for the interactive map, it'll show your location and the nearest Florida Trail location is to you. And most folks live within an hour's drive of the Florida Trail, kind of no matter where you are in the state. So it's pretty accessible. Whether you're a new hiker, if you're going out with your family, or if you're more of a seasoned hiker, there's something for everyone on the trail. And a little bit about the Florida Trail Association and our mission. So we are responsible for developing, maintaining, protecting, and promoting the Florida Trail, as well as the network of trails that we maintain. Together with our partners, primarily the U.S. Forest Service, we create opportunities for people to hike, learn about Florida's environment, enjoy outdoors, recreation, and give back through meaningful volunteer service, which is probably one of my favorite aspects about our community is our volunteers and our chapters. So we couldn't do this without our volunteers. So we have around 500 dedicated volunteers across the state who are organized into these 19 chapters. Each chapter is responsible for stewarding a specific section of the trail, and they host trail maintenance projects, outdoor activities, meetings, hikes, paddling, all of that good stuff. And each year, our FTA volunteers contribute around 30,000 volunteer hours annually. So that's pretty incredible. If you're interested in getting involved, you can scan that code to find your chapter. I'm also going to put a bunch of links in the chat. Um, Highly recommend checking out your chapter. It's the heart and soul of the FTA. All right, so I'm going to transition over to Carl's slideshow here. And as you can see, the Florida Trail offers incredible opportunities to experience wild places in Florida. But spending time outdoors means that you also need to be prepared. So whether you're heading out just for a short day hike or you're going out for a weekend backpacking trip, it's really important to have basic wilderness first aid knowledge. So that's what today's webinar is all about. And this is just going to be a small slice of the material that Carl normally covers in his 2-day wilderness first aid certification course. So these courses are offered free to Florida Trail Association members through our statewide chapters. And this course helps equip our volunteers with the skills and confidence to stay safe and respond to emergencies on the trail. So if today's presentation sparks your interest, I'm going to put a link in the chat to an interest form. Um, Go ahead and fill that out. It doesn't, register you for a course, but it just lets us know that you'd like to hear about future courses and helps us kind of plan and organize. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Carl Byers. Carl is a retired Army officer and licensed nurse practitioner with decades of experience in healthcare, emergency response, and leadership. He's been an active volunteer with the FTA's Western Gate chapter since 2018, contributing countless hours to trail maintenance, sawyer work, bridge construction repair, campsite maintenance, and other stewardship projects. His professional background, combined with his extensive experience on the trail, makes him uniquely qualified to teach wilderness first aid. Throughout his career, Carl has served in clinical and leadership roles across the United States and abroad, including supporting presidential medical operations while in the Army. After his military service, he worked in internal medicine and gastroenterology and served as clinical nurse practitioner instructor at Johns Hopkins University and Howard University. When he's not volunteering on the Florida Trail, Carl enjoys hiking, camping, sailing, and traveling, and has completed sections of both the Appalachian Trail and the Florida Trail. And Carl, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much. It was a great introduction. Again, my name's Carl. Jane said, this is a 2-day course I normally give across, 16, 18 hours, and I'm condensing it down to about 45 minutes. So I'm picking and choosing some very important pearls of wisdom that I'd like for you to take home after the webinar is over today. Next slide, please. So the first thing we're going to cover, we're going to talk about liability, some trail safety tips, the top hiking injuries that you might see, how to do a primary survey, and what to handle and put in your first aid kit, and then we'll have some questions at the end. Let's talk about liability for a second. Fortunately, in every state in the United States, there's a law called the Good Samaritan Law that it says if you render aid to someone, don't worry about getting sued, as long as you don't do something grossly negligent and you have their permission. All right. So what does grossly negligent mean? So what a common layperson would be able to see if they were going to respond to an emergency. In other words, if their foot is blown off and you start looking inside their ear, that would be considered grossly negligent. So as long as you don't do something really stupid, you'll be covered under the Good Samaritan law. Now you have to worry about, well, how does someone give me consent? Because you have to have someone's consent. If they're conscious to talk to them and you can talk to them, they have to give you permission to treat them. So I would say, hey, my name's Carl. I've been trained in first aid. Can I help you? And if the person says, yes, Carl, please, I need some help, that's express consent. That person is giving me verbal confirming that I can treat them. So, but if the person can't talk, but they're nodding their head, they want some help, then that's implied consent. So the person would want you to help, they just can't talk to you about it. The other cases is somebody is totally unconscious. If someone's totally unconscious and you decide to render help, you're not going to be held liable, and because it's implied that that person would want to be helped if they were conscious. The other thing to remember is just you're not obligated to stop to help anybody. You know, there's no obligation. You're not going to get in trouble if somebody's in an accident because it's what you feel comfortable with. So don't go outside your safety comfort. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about trail safety tips here, some of the big things I hear and I've seen. Number one, try to hike with a partner. Having a second person or a third person along with you. If something goes wrong, you've got someone else that can help you get out of a jam and get you some aid to help you get better. Hopefully, you don't die on the trail. Too many people hike by themselves and they don't leave a detailed, here, I'm going to be in Jonestown, on Tuesday. If you haven't heard from me, something's wrong. So you need to have a trail plan so people know where you will be, when you're going to end up, so people don't have to worry about you. The other thing is, if someone starts worrying and they activate the 911 search and rescue team, they don't have any idea. They may know you're on the Florida Trail, but they don't know where you are. So it's a big hazard for everyone involved. So hike with someone, take a cell phone. Cell phones can be an important part of getting someone to come and help you. If you have a cell phone and you're going out overnight, take something to recharge your cell phone too. Because I've already seen people say, "Hey, my battery was dead because it was in my pocket." So cell phones for 911 communication, and make sure you have a charger for them. The next thing we're going to talk about is just the equipment that you take. First of all, know your equipment. You don't go buy a $200 pair of hiking boots to take a 15-mile hike the next day. You're just asking for trouble. So make sure your equipment is broken in and you know how to use it. If you have a brand new tent, put it together at the house before you get out on the trail and it's pouring down rain. You want to know where everything works and how it works and all fits together. So the next thing is food. If you're going to go out on an overnight hike and you're going to go pick up the freeze-dried chili mac, try it at home 2 or 3 days before you go out on the trail. The last thing you want to do is have your chili mac on the trail and all of a sudden it doesn't agree with you, and then you're up a creek and you're into another situation. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the top 10 injuries and how you treat them. So this is compiled from Hiker Magazine and some other sources. So the number one injury on the trail, believe it or not, is blisters. We already talked about it. So what do you do when you have a blister? If you start feeling some discomfort on your foot, you need to stop right then before it turns into a full-fledged blister. It just becomes a hot spot. It may be your foot is sweating. It may be your socks are too tight. It may be your boots are not broken in well enough. The bottom line is if it's just red in the area, that's the time to take the steps to keep it from turning into a full-fledged blister. Put some petroleum jelly on it. Cover it up with a little moleskin. As long as the skin is intact, you're in good shape. Now, if you get to the end of the day and you've got a full-fledged blister with a dome on it, that's a different situation. After you've taken your shoes and socks off, you want to clean the area around it with some alcohol swabs or some sort of microbial liquid and get it as clean as possible. Get a safety pin. Again, sterilize it with either a flame or some alcohol, and you stick the edge of the pin right at the base of the dome where the fluid is. Once you stick a little hole in there and pull the safety pin out, some fluid's going to come out. It'll be just a clear fluid. Take your gauze, clean it up real good. Again, wipe around the area, and then you want to cover that blister with some moleskin with a hole in it so the blister will have a place to get some air. Try to keep the dome of that blister intact. You don't want to remove it because that just exposes you to more infection. The next thing on the list is sprains, strains, and breaks. Sprains, we've all stepped into a hole, we've reached it out and tried to stop ourselves, and we sprain our wrist, sprain our ankle. Pretty easy to fix, okay? Most sprains are very minor. You might limp a little bit, but you can walk out on it. But there's an acronym that we use called RICE, RICE. R stands for rest. You need to stop and just take a look at the situation. I stands for ice, which you might have a cold pack in your first aid kit. C is for compression. You would take an elastic wrap and wrap their ankle really good. And E is for elevation. Think about the football players who get an ankle injury and they go run out and the crew sets up and they come out and their ankle is this big around because they've just wrapped that thing so tight that it gives some stability to the ankle. Now, one thing you have to remember, don't wrap things so tight that you cut off the circulation to the rest of the extremity. You don't want to do that, but it should be compressed enough where the patient has a difficult time of moving that and gives them some support. Which goes into the next thing, a break. What happens if someone breaks an arm? What happens if they break a clavicle? What happens if they break your femur, the long bone in your leg? Totally treated differently. Someone who falls and fractures their clavicle, their collarbone, it hurts. Can they move it? Yeah, it hurts, but you could splint that arm in the position where the patient said, "Oh yeah, that feels pretty good," because they're going to find a position of comfort. They're going to say, "Oh yeah, man, if I stand like this, it doesn't hurt as bad." That's how you want to leave that person. But you would wrap it with a cloth, and I'm going to talk about bandages here in a few minutes, and take the pack off, and then you would walk out with the person. Someone who has a fractured femur, on the other hand, you're not going to move that person. They can't stand, they can't walk. You're going to have to get 911 and some rescue people to come and help you and bring in the proper equipment to get that person evacuated. That doesn't mean you can't make that person comfortable. If they're cold, you try to cover them up. So you want to make them as comfortable as possible. But that person is not walking out. That someone else is going to come and get that person. Minor cuts and scrapes. We've all done this as well. But the thing you want to remember as it goes from a minor, if it's just trickling a little blood and you've scraped the skin off of it, those are called venous blood, venous bleeding. All right, it's from the low pressure system in our body, and some pressure applied to the cut or the scrape will make the bleeding stop. Now it may take 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes for the bleeding to stop. I've asked the person for my permission to treat them, and they give me permission, and I start putting some pressure on the wound. The next thing I'm going to ask them, "Hey, are you on any medications that I need to be aware of?" And if they say, "Yeah, I'm on a blood thinner," which millions of people are, you're going to have to hold pressure a little bit longer on that person to keep the bleeding stop, to make the bleeding stop. You don't want to remove any gauze dressings that you've put on a wound. You just want to simply cover it with more gauze. And then you use the 3 Ps: pressure, pressure, and more pressure. All right. You're going to push hard, hard, hard on that wound. And to the point where the patient may say, "You're hurting me, Carl, you're hurting me," but I don't want them to bleed out. And that's not going to happen with a venous bleed, very unlikely. But on the other side of the system, we have arterial bleeds. That's the high pressure system of your body. So if someone is unfortunate to cut themselves and cut into an artery, and you have arteries all the way to in all your fingers, they get bigger and bigger and bigger as they get to your heart. But if someone has a arterial bleed, that is a true life-saving emergency. And it's going to take a lot of pressure and a lot of time to get that bleeding to stop. In the case of severe bleeding, you might want to reach for something in your first aid kit, a tourniquet. I'll show you more later about that. A tourniquet can be used to stop bleeding, and you don't worry about taking it off. Let somebody else worry about taking it off. But you only use a tourniquet in extreme conditions. But you also have to stop the bleeding because they're going to bleed out very quickly if you don't, especially from a large bleed. Next thing we'll talk about is allergic reactions, insect bites, stings. Walking on the trail, especially if you're doing trail work, you hit an underground beehive, and boy, they come up and they start stinging you. So when we go on trails, hikes here, and I'm usually the medical person in charge, I want to know if they have any pre-existing conditions. So if a newcomer comes to our group, and I say, "Hey, my name's Carl. I'm kind of the guy who takes care of everybody. Can you tell me, do you have any medical problems?" And if they say, "Yeah, I'm highly allergic to bees," my next question is going to be, "Hey, do you have your EpiPen with you?" And if he says, "Oh, it's in the car in the glove compartment," that does me no good whatsoever. He has to have that with him if he wants to come with me on this hike. If he says, "I don't have an EpiPen because I haven't had a reaction in 10 years," that means nothing to me. Okay, you've already told me you're highly allergic to bee stings. So don't take somebody out on the trail with you if without unless they are prepared for the situations you're going to run into. And that's just common sense. I don't want to have someone have an asthma attack, 5 miles into the trail when I should have asked him before we ever left, hey, do you have asthma? Do you have your inhaler? All right. So it's as much a burden on you as the person who's leading the trail hike to make sure that everyone has what they need. The person should have it on their pack. And I personally go look and find it in the pack because I guarantee you, if you ever run into a true emergency situation, the first thing most people do is panic. And so if I don't want to go struggling through a pack that I know nothing about to looking for an epinephrine pen. So just keep that in the back of your head. Um, burns, thermal burns, sunburns. Sunburn is totally preventable. Wearing the right garments when you go out, putting on sunscreen, you can prevent getting sunburn all day long. A thermal burn, on the other hand, is something a little bit more serious. We're talking about something with fire in this case. And my scenario is, and I've seen this happen, people they have a long hike. At the end of the day, they build a campfire, they set up their tents around the campfire. Somebody gets up to go to the bathroom, come back, trips over a rope, falls into the fire. All right, catches their arm on fire, and it's the same time when they go down, and they suck fire down into their lungs. So these are medical emergencies that have to be evaluated quickly and effectively. And the last thing you want is someone's trachea, their windpipe, to start swelling, and then they can't breathe, and then you're really up a creek. So be careful around your campfire. This is camp safety. If someone does catch on fire, the old elementary school stop, drop, and roll. That's the first thing you do. You want to look at the burn and to evaluate it, cut off any material that may be around it. If there's blisters that have already formed, don't touch the blisters, don't break the blisters. There are burn packs so that you can get to put in your first aid kit that have a special ointment in them that help cool the burn, stops infection and things like that. So consider having one of those if you're going to go be in some place where you might have a campfire or something. It's just a good thing to have. All right, dehydration. Let's talk about that for a second. Dehydration, again, a totally preventable problem. But I've seen it, and you've probably seen it. You go start on a hike, everybody got water. I never drink water on the trail, man. I never get thirsty. That's just not the right answer. You're going to carry water with you if you're going to come on a hike with me. All right. If you don't drink it, I can't force you to drink it, but I might need it for some other situation. So everyone carries water on the hikes. That's just the bottom line with our group. So, but the first signs of dehydration, if you're in a group and someone kind of starts slowly losing ground and backing up further and further and further in the group, you might want to, you should have a sweep, someone at the end of the hike to make sure that there's nobody being left behind. If someone starts falling behind and you start asking them, hey, what's going on? And, why am I, they don't give you the right kind of an answer. That's the first sign, some confusion with dehydration and some weakness. So that person needs to stop. You need to stop and get some fluids into them with some electrolyte solution so they can become rehydrated. It's just something that's really preventable. But what happens if you don't, the next thing you move into is heat cramps. Heat cramps, and we've had these too. You're working, you're sweating like crazy, and all of a sudden you go drive home and your fingers are all cramped up or your calf cramps up. It's because you've lost too many electrolytes and now you're deficient. So you can prevent that though by staying hydrated. And anybody who's worked here in the Florida summertime on these trails knows how hot it is. I'm in the Western Gate group just right outside of Pensacola, and it's 105, 110 degree index when we go out sometimes. We don't stay very long, but you can really become dehydrated and have heat cramps associated with that. Heat exhaustion is what happens after heat cramps. And it's just a point where people, I can't go anymore. I can't more. You might have to help them drink water to stay hydrated. But again, this is something that's really reversible and not terribly life-threatening. If you move into heat stroke, now you're in a life-threatening situation, all right? People who have gone so far and they've just gotten so overextended that they collapse. They may be breathing okay, their heart might be working okay, but they're unresponsive to you. This person definitely needs to be, is a medical emergency, and you need to take this person to cool them off as quickly as possible. Put them in a creek. Take the extra water that the guy didn't want. Pour it on them. Fan them. Get a cloth and fan the people. All those things is help bring that core temperature down. In the worst case scenario, heat stroke can be up to 65% fatal. 65%. That's very, very high. And it's something that's totally preventable. So I stress to everyone who's doing hiking, summer or winter, make sure you have enough fluids with you so you don't have heat problems. Now, the next one on the list is hypothermia. And people say, dang, you're in Florida. What can happen in Florida? Well, I was down teaching a class down in Loretta, Florida, and I said, who gets hypothermia in Florida? And they raised their hand. We all did. And what happened was they took a trip out on an airboat, and an afternoon thunderstorm came up, just like they always do. It's thundering and lightning. They have very, very thin clothes on. There's pouring down rain. So the boat is going back very, very fast, and every single person had hypothermia. They were chilled to the bone when they got off. So one of the space blankets, the little silver blankets, something should be in your first aid kit. These people need to be warmed up. They need to get a place where they can get some warmth. Once they stopped and everything, everybody got the dry clothes on, then everybody was fine. Okay. The big D, all right. We don't like to talk about it, but it happens. And this goes back to the being careful of what you take with you on the trail. The beef jerky with the extra pepperoni and jalapeno peppers. You might want to avoid that when you're taking it on the trail, unless you've tried it before. So just be cautious of what you're eating. Be cautious if you're having to take water from a creek, that it needs to be cleaned and sterilized, boiled, everything before you consume it or mix it with food, because you have a potential for developing diarrhea. Diarrhea then turns into what's to that? Dehydration. So they feed off each other. And when dehydration goes into heat cramps and heat stroke, there you go. You got a big triangle there. So please be careful with what you eat and what you drink when you're on the trail. Next one is snake bites and animal bites. If a fox or a raccoon comes up to me in the middle of the day and they're snarling at me and I unfortunately get bitten, that's a medical emergency. That person needs to be taken to the emergency room as soon as possible so they can get a rabies vaccinated started. Don't worry about catching the animal. Don't worry, hey, it was a fox and it was foaming, or just if the animal bites you and it breaks the skin, you don't know anything about the animal, that's treated as a potential rabies bite. Snake bites, on the other hand, it can happen on the trail. But let me give you a little statistics here. The last count I got from about 2 years ago from the CDC, about 7 to 8,000 venomous snake bites per year, all right, in the United States. Out of the 7 or 8,000 bites, only 5 people passed away from it. Well, 5 people, but that's a very, very, very low statistic. The other thing about snake bites you have to remember is you're a big person and the snake's very small. Most of the time, well, 30 to 40% of the time, when a snake bites you, they give you a dry bite, all right? A dry bite. They don't inject any venom into the wound. And so, because they know it takes a lot of energy to make their venom, and so they don't want to waste it on something that they can't eat. So they may dry bite you. How would I know about that? Well, I would know about that because if someone says, dang, oh, something just bit me, and you look down and you see two puncture wounds on the leg, then you would say, yeah, it probably was a snake. I don't worry about finding the snake. I don't worry about any of that. Now I'm worried about the patient. All right. So what do I do? How do I take care of this? If I have someone with a snake bite, I'm going to remove the boot and the sock as much as I can. And then I'm going to clean the area around the wound with an antiseptic wipe. I'm going to take one of the Sharpies that you would have in your first aid kit, and I'm going to draw a little circle around those 2 dots. All right, just enough to cover them around. Why do I do that? Because 35 minutes later, 45 minutes later, you stop, and if you see that little circle, there's redness all the way out 2 or 3 inches, you can pretty much guarantee that snake bite put venom into the bite. If it's still about the same size, It still doesn't mean that you don't go to the emergency room, but the likelihood of it being a dry bite are much higher. So don't worry about the old timey, I got the snake bite kit and I cut it and I sucked the venom out. All that stuff is BS. If you have one of those kits, throw it away. It's not good anymore. The other thing is when you put the boot back on, which I would do because I want this patient to walk out with me. They're not going to stay calm. You got to get out, get this person to the emergency room. Is you don't want to tighten up that lace boot really, really tight. Give it some room for swelling if it were to happen. If you don't want it falling off, but just keep it loose enough to where they can move with it and it gives them some protection so you can walk at a fairly decent rate versus being barefooted. All right, next slide. So this is the take home situation for today. I've said a lot of things, but this is how I like people to process. If you're a lay person, and I still do this. If you're speaking of, I have about 15 years of emergency room experience too. So a lot of this stuff I've seen actually in the emergency room. So if you're doing a primary, if you come across a victim and they're down, you ask, "Hey, my name's Carl. I know first aid? Can I treat you?" And if they say yes, then I'm going to do these 6 things on here. First, I'm going to look to see, is there anything dangerous that I'm going to get myself into? Does this person have a gun pointed to their head? Are they laying under an electrical, fence that's sparking everything? So you don't want to go into a situation where you can become a victim yourself. So just assess the scene. This whole thing takes about 15 seconds to do. I know there's nothing dangerous here. Okay, so the scene is safe. The next thing I want to do is R, which stands for response. Is this person going to talk to me? Tom, are you okay? Yeah, Carl, I'm just fine, man. I just got a little lightheaded. Okay, so I know Tom is talking to me. He's not in any danger. So now I can kind of relax a little bit. I don't have to worry about anything, or I don't have to worry about too much from here. The next thing would be if that person does not respond. Tom, are you okay? No, Tom's not talking to me. I'm going to say, Bill, okay? Bill, call 911 and bring the first aid kit to me. So you don't want to just say, somebody call 911. Then no one, everyone's going to take it to, hey, you did it. I thought you did it. You want to pick out a particular person and say, you go call 911 and get me the first aid kit. And then they'll come back to help you. So that's the sin. Then the next 3 are just your airway, breathing, and circulation. A lot of times people may pass out. There's a lot of different reasons people pass out, but all they need to do is have their airway opened. And it's a simple thing. It's called a head lift chin, head tilt chin. You take your hand, put it on their forehead, tilt their neck back, and then you hold their chin where you can get to their mouth. If they take a deep breath, you're okay. They're breathing. You just want to monitor that person. But if they're not breathing at all, if they start to turn blue, you would want to give them a rescue breath. Now, in the field, in the real world, we use something that looks like this. Okay, it's a face mask. It's over your nose, and you can blow into this to give respirations, or you can hook an ambu bag to it to give oxygen. But in your pack, you should have these little nifty CPR mask. Comes in a little bitty package like this. All right. I give these out to people when they take my first aid course, the wilderness first aid course. It's part of the package. And but inside of this little thing is a mask that looks like this. All right. It has top on it and it says mouth to mouth. And then it says operator side. All right. So this is the side that you want to put to your face. All right. You put this on your side, on your face, and then you have a little valve here that you can blow into to give a person a rescue breath. This is if you choose to do a rescue breathing. If you don't have one of these masks, then you need to be prepared to do mouth to mouth. It works the same way. One of the things I didn't mention, you do have to pinch the person's nose because if you blow into their mouth without pinching their nose, it's just going to go out. So you have to pinch the person's nose. You would seal your lips against their lips and you just give them a regular breath. You're not trying to blow up a balloon, just a regular breath. Once, twice. Breathe in, you should be able to see their chest rise when you give that breath, just like you would normally see yours. If you don't see the chest rise, might want to reposition their neck and their head to make sure your airway is open. If they're not breathing, then you need to go to the next step, which is their circulation. This person is more than likely in cardiac arrest. And if you've gotten there in time by doing good CPR to push down on their chest to give the chest compressions, you can help get oxygenated blood through their system. The other thing you have to worry about with circulation is this person has such a bad bleed that you see blood squirting out. So that you're not so much worried about their heart at that point in time because you can see their blood squirting, but you're worried about them bleeding out. So that's where you would reach for your tourniquet from your first aid kit. Talking about first aid kit, next slide, please. And let me just go back and just say, this is a 2-day course. I'm putting this in about 40 minutes. So I know there's a lot of things that, you might have questions for. Please contact your local chapter or contact me if Jane will put my phone number information. I don't mind, Jane, and we can get a class organized for you. All right. And I have 3 classes coming up. So there's plenty of room for everybody. So here's the first aid checklist that we're going to talk about. All right. And this is what I consider to be a minimum amount of a first aid kit, especially if you're going with 2 or 3 people. Adhesive bandages, just good old band-aids, something small, something larger that you can use to cover up a wound. I would prefer that people get the ones that are waterproof as well. So if you're going to get some band-aids, get the ones that are waterproof because they're much better. So triangular bandage. If you've never seen a triangular bandage, that's what these are. Should be in your first aid kit. This is, in my opinion, this is the most versatile bandage that you can have in a first aid kit. It can be a tourniquet. It can be a sling. It can help stop bleeding. It can do a number of things. It can hold abdominal pain. It's just a very versatile bandage. It's not sterile, but in an extreme emergency, I don't really care if it's sterile or not. It's clean, so I can put it down on somebody to help them stop bleeding. With blister treatment, the moleskin, very easily available. I would recommend having that in your first aid kit. Some little blister pads. Those are the ones that have the little hole already cut into them so you can put over it. Some adhesive tape, some 4x4s, 2x2 gauze pads. They don't take up a whole lot of room. If you want to have a larger abdominal dressing, not a bad idea to have either. All right, alcohol wipes, antiseptic wipes, some electrolyte tablets, some packets. They have the IV fluid now in the packet and all these other things. They're very easy to mix up with the bottle of water. You have to have the water. So that's something that I would recommend people have it. It may not even be for you. It could be for somebody you're hiking with. Antibiotic ointment. When you're talking to a patient and they've given you permission to treat them, as the course of the conversation, besides asking them, hey, do you have any medical problems I need to know about? I'm going to, hey, are you allergic to anything? Oh, yeah, I'm allergic to antibiotics. Okay. If that person tells you they're allergic to antibiotics, you don't give them antibiotic ointment. It's not the end of the world as long as you keep the thing clean. If they aren't allergic to anything, if you have a little Neosporin or triple antibiotic in your pack, it's not going to hurt anything to put a little bit of that on there. Not a super big deal. Tweezers and safety pins, self-explanatory. Taking the tick off, moving a little bitty piece of wood from a splinter from your finger. A good thing to have tweezers. Safety pins, they actually come in these triangular bandages packs, but you could have a couple of more extra. Hydrocortisone cream, it's self-explanatory. It's an anti-inflammatory, anti-itch medicine. So, you can put it on a bug bite or mosquito bite. It does a good job stopping the itching. Pain relievers. Let's talk about that for a second. When someone has a minor injury, a scrape or a sprain, if they're not allergic to anything and they're saying, "Damn, this hurts," if they have any ibuprofen, naproxen, Aleve, any of those non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, it's certainly okay to give it to them, especially if they say, "Yeah, can you give me some of my ibuprofen?" So people say, I can't take ibuprofen, but I can take Tylenol. The reason why there's a difference between the two, The ibuprofen, that category of drugs, they're anti-inflammatory. Okay, so they stop inflammation. That's a really good thing. Tylenol, and it's also a good pain medicine. All right, it's a pain medicine, a fever reducer, and an anti-inflammatory. Tylenol, on the other hand, is a fever reducer and a pain reliever, but it does nothing for inflammation. So if I have a choice of two medicines and someone has a sprain, then I'm going to go with the ibuprofen or the naproxen. A Sharpie pen, I talked to you about those. That's a good thing to have just in case you need to write something and leave a message on a tree or something that is good for that. Antacids, some nowadays it's not a bad idea just to pack a couple Tums or two into a little kit. Medical gloves, they can be sterile or non-sterile, but you need to have some medical gloves in your kit. The chances of getting a bloodborne disease from blood now is very small, but it's still there. All right. So before I go, sticking my hand in something to try to stop, I'm going to try to find something to protect my hand and protect them from my germs. And a medical glove, a non-sterile medical glove is just fine for that. Even if I have my work gloves on the trail and someone unfortunately has a bad cut, I'm going to put my work glove on there. I'll worry about an infection later. I'm trying to keep this person from bleeding to death. CPR mask. I showed you what that looked like. There's also, this is the mask for a breathing mask, and then the CPR mask is this one. And you can get this stuff from Amazon. You might have to I get them, in the bulks of 50. I don't know if they come in smaller numbers from that, but it's all on Amazon. A mirror and a whistle. You want a whistle in case you need to call somebody and get some help. It's a really good way. Travels a long distance. A mirror for self-inspection, and if you need to signal somebody. Thermal blanket, we talked about that. It's a really good thing to have. Takes up very little space in a pack, and it can come in handy. Pouring down rain, it can be a poncho, it can be a lot of things. I always like to take a little duct tape, 10, 15 feet of duct tape. I twirl it around on a pencil and keep it in the packs. That way, it's one of the little pencils that you get from the lottery place. And it works really well, stays on there, and then I can use it for small repairs or anything like that. Last but not least was personal medications. If you have any medicines you take, you want to make sure you take those and a couple of doses more in case something happens if you're delayed on the trail. And I think that pretty much brings me to the end of my presentation. Is there another slide? I think the next one is questions. So thank you very much. I know this was a lot of stuff in a very short period of time, but if you're interested, we'll get a wilderness first aid class for you. And in the wilderness first aid class, you are certified in CPR, you're certified in how to use an automated external defibrillator, and then in wilderness first aid, I do have a certification body behind it for 2 years. So I like all the little things that are coming up. I haven't seen anyone say anything negative, and I appreciate. Oh, a lot of hearts. Jane, you there? I'll turn it back over to you, Jane. You're muted. Is that it? God, I hope you don't want to say anything? Jane, can you talk to me?
Oh, this is my fault. Hold on. Ask Jane to unmute.
I
Okay.
got it. Yeah. It's because
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
that's
I
okay. I made Bree the main host, so I couldn't unmute myself. I felt powerless.
I couldn't tell. No, no, Carl, no, no, no.
I forgot that I was the person in charge of everyone being muted.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Carl. That was awesome. Tons of good info. I did see somebody ask, if we would share the first aid kit list. I think I can just do a follow-up email. And Carl, if it's okay with you, just share your slideshow so everyone can have the first aid kit checklist.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. And we did get a couple of questions. So someone asked, what about an object in the eye?
Ah, interesting. And that's a are you if you're still on, Alex, go into that. It's not that uncommon, especially if you're working with the mowers and this equipment that we use on the trail. But here's the thing, this is covered in detail in the wilderness first aid class. But the first thing you're going to do is make sure that the person doesn't try to pull something out from their eye. Okay, if they have a embedded little stick or something and you can't see it, don't pull it out. Just leave it alone. But what you want to do is you want to cover the eye, take one of your water bottles, cut it off, put some gauze around the end, so then put that bottle over the eye, the affected eye, so the object doesn't touch their eye. Now, you think, okay, and then you wrap a bandage around and you're good to go. But you're not really good to go. You have to remember, humans are not lizards. We can't move our eyeballs independently. We move them together. So if someone has an object in their left eye and you've covered up their left eye with a cup, you're going to put a blindfold essentially around, well, not essentially, around both eyes. That person is going to be totally blind to keep them from moving their eye and causing further damage to the eyeball. So that's just another thing that you have to consider because that person now is totally blind and dependent on you to help them get out to a point of safety. So that pretty much covers it.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I got another question that someone sent to me about, can you still hike if you have certain pre-existing conditions? How can you be prepared for that? They were referencing a hiker who had to be airlifted out of Yosemite because she had Hashimoto's disease and had an emergency. So how would you respond to that?
I've run into this situation actually, and this happens almost every January. We at the Western Gate we do work year round, so it typically happens in January. People have made a New Year's resolution, and we had a guy show up. It's been several years ago. He showed up and new to the group and introduced himself, and we introduced. So I said, "Hey, man, welcome here. What brings you to come out and work on the trail?" Well, I just had a quadruple bypass. I'm about 150 pounds overweight, and I have high blood pressure, and I have type 2 diabetes. But my doc said I need to start getting some exercise. So I think coming and working on the Florida Trail is a really good idea for me to do. And it is. But I tell you what, as soon as you get me a note from your cardiologist or your primary care person that says you're capable of going out and working in this weather and under these conditions, you're welcome to come with me because now I have someone higher signing off on that person. Otherwise, he doesn't come, and that person did not come with us. I can tell you
Mm,
that right now. That's how I handled it.
yeah, that's a good way to handle it. Okay, we had another question. In the case of a snake bite, far from rescue with no cell service, no satellite, no evac, if within 30 minutes it shows inflammation, what can be done in the field?
Absolutely nothing. You're not going to stop the venom from circulating. So the best thing to do is just keep on doing what you're doing and get to someone who can help you because there's nothing you can do. It's in their system and you can expect further swelling. It takes several hours for the swelling to keep going bigger and bigger and bigger. So you've got some leeway, but that's why you want to get to some place as quickly as you can. It may come down to the point where the person has to have their boot almost totally off, which is better than being barefooted. But you do have some leeway there, but there's really nothing else you can do in the field to help that person other than to get them to a higher level of care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And hope it's a dry bite.
That's why the 30-minute inflammation thing was the
Yeah. If it starts to swell up, you can pretty much guarantee that some venom got in. All right. And there's not really good documentation. Some people say, hey, they'll only put a little venom or a lot. There's not any correlation. If there's some swelling there, they more than likely got venom inside when they were bitten, and you just got to do what you can do. Again, just remember, out of 7,000 to 8,000 people, only 5 fatalities. So the chances of something bad happening are very small.
Hmm.
Thanks.
Um, there was another question. Bob says, I'm a kayaker. Any tips for being on the water and giving first aid?
Hmm. The only thing, I mean, the first thing you think about is with someone in the water is a drowning victim. And whereas in someone who has a cardiac arrest on land and you see them pass out on land, you start off with you give a rescue breath and you would give them CPR, the compressions. Someone who's a drowning victim, the first thing I'm going to do is get them to a safe place where I can give them a couple of rescue breaths really quickly, even if it's just dragging them back to the shore. You want to get some oxygen in those lungs to see if you can kind of jumpstart everything. It's possible to get someone some oxygen when they're drowning and they make a full recovery. So that would be the only thing that I would say different. Get them to safety and get them rescue breaths as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Another question from John. Do you have any recommendations or favorite items for backpacks, bags, etc.? What is helpful or what should we look for when purchasing something like this? That's a big
Uh,
question.
that's,
Gear.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all good gear people here? Because I mean, I just have my pack with the camel bag or whatever it's called. You know, it holds about 2 liters.
Yeah.
It works for me. I don't think I need anything much fancier than that. When I go on overnight hikes, I do carry a purification thing, but that's the different situation. So really, I don't have a particular brand or make or model to recommend. I just don't. My knowledge is that's not
Yeah.
there. How
I
to do
would say
colonoscopy? I can tell you how to do a colonoscopy, but
different type of bag. Um,
yeah, different.
I would say a couple of good brands. I mean, I think you mentioned Osprey. I have a ULA pack, which I really like. I've had Gossamer gear. I know that, not affiliated with any of these brands, by the way. Would love to be. But REI, I know that you can go and whether you're getting just a day hiking backpack or an overnight backpacking bag, they'll fit you, they'll show you what's what. It's such a personal preference, but they can kind of show you here's where it's supposed to fit on your hips, here's how it's supposed to kind of feel and how it should ride. And then from there, you can check out, oh, I do like having, this top pocket, I do like this or that, and then get into the personal preferences. So I would just suggest kind of checking out REI, check out YouTube. I would say Florida also kind of has some special, Florida's hiking is different. So just maybe like looking up, I know Jupiter Hikes has done a lot of like year videos about Florida Trail. Dixie Homemade Wanderlust on YouTube did a Florida Trail series. So that might be a good place to start. Um, let's see. Dawn Griffin. Hey, Dawn. She was asking for a burn blister patch. Do you have a burn blister patch you recommend?
I don't know the brand name of it because I got it again on Amazon, but it's called a burn pack, and it shouldn't be that hard to find. You can get them. I've seen them in the Publix pharmacy where we have too. It's a little package about this big. It has a gel in it, and it's all sterile, and you take it right out of the pack and put it on the burn. It's very easy to use. By the same token, and I didn't mention that, but since you're talking about a burn pack. There's another thing that people could put in their first aid kit, and it's a bleed stop kit. It's a little packet of coagulation medicine that when you sprinkle it on a bleed, whether it's venous or arterial, it helps clot the blood. A
Hmm.
simple thing to
That's,
add.
yeah,
See that there's no
that's,
there's no one first aid kit can't work for everybody. It's just you have to kind of personalize it for yourself. The ones we carry out on the trail, they're huge. I mean, I have
yeah,
pretty much anything in there to take care of anything.
yeah. That's it. This kind of leads into the next question, which was, is there a negative to using Quick Clot?
I don't see a negative to it because it's a surface medication that it clots from the surface. It does not go systemic, as far as I know. So I don't see any unless person says, you know what, I've tried that before and it makes me have a rash. All right. If they say I've used one of these at home, if they have any history of an allergic reaction to if they say I'm allergic, I don't know what medicine it is, but I'm allergic to it. It was this blue looking pill. But as far as 99.9% of the time, I would say I would use it without hesitation if I had someone had a good bleed. I hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of a rash, here's a question from another Jane. She said, when I hiked the OTL 2 times, I get a reaction to the water when crossing the Hobbs Grove Canal. It's fine, but any thoughts on why and how to prevent it? I could jump in and say I've hiked that trail like 3 times, love the ocean to lake. Um, that Hope's Grove Canal, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like agricultural runoff or fertilizer or something in
Mhm.
that water. That would be my first guess that that's what's irritating you, because on the ocean to lake, you've been crossing through swamps and creeks and all kinds of stuff. But then you get to that one, and that's when you get your rash. That would be my first bet. And in that case, maybe just when you get carry extra water and like fresh water and rinse off your feet afterwards or something. That's all I could think of.
I mean, you talk about an allergic reaction, certainly it could be a chemical thing. It depends on how bad it would be, but there's nothing. If I know I'm going to go out and there's a lot of mosquitoes and I have a rash when I get mosquito bitten by a mosquito, I'm going to take an antihistamine before I go out and do something like that. What's an antihistamine? Benadryl is your number one, but Claritin, Zyrtec, Allegra, they're all antihistamines and they help stop swelling and itching. So depending on the severity of it, I might pre-medicate myself with an antihistamine so the rash wouldn't get as bad or maybe not happen at all.
That's a good idea. All right. Fact or fiction? Can 911 be reached if you have no cell service? People are
Uh,
talking about
that's a very interesting question, and I'm gonna dodge it to the best I can. But here's what I've been told. I did a class one time when there was a retired cell guy, and he told me, and this is a he said she said, but he said that there are towers set up by the government that are independent from the Verizon and the AT&T that are only responding to the 911 signal. Now, I've never tried it. I've asked the fire department and they said they didn't know anything about it. But that would be what I would say. Now, on the same topic, because I saw this a second ago, I was teaching a class and talking about how the importance of a cell phone is, and somebody said, "Well, I have a satellite cell phone," and I said, "Wow, that's fantastic." And so when he pulled it out and showed it to me, hell, he might have been showing me, the Greek alphabet. I had no idea how to even turn the thing on. So if you're in a group of people, and I'm not saying I'm just an average kind of a guy, all right? But if you're going out with someone and they do have a cell phone, if they become the victim, I want to know how to use the thing, all right? So, show me how to use it, and then I'll be familiar with it, and I can use it as the tool it was meant to be.
Right. That's a great point, and that's a good reminder even for myself because I carry it's not a satellite cell phone, but it's just it's called a personal locator beacon, PLB, and it's from Spot. And I have like pay like $15 a month for it or something like that. And all it really has is an SOS button. So
Mhm.
you hit that for rescue. And then it does have you can go before you head out on your trip, you go and load in your emergency contact phone numbers. I think you can enter up to like 5 people, and then you have some preset messages. And you can send a preset message that, um, we're okay. Like if they just haven't heard from you through regular cell phone, you can just hit like we're okay, and it sends those people a message just letting them know, like, oh, we haven't gotten a text from Jane, where is she? But you can send that out. Just something to look into if you don't want to go full. satellite phone. My goodness, we'll try to get these last few questions. We're pretty much at time, but we got a couple more. Let's see. How often to inspect your first aid kit to remove expired meds and other supplies? How long can bandages stay before they expire?
Good question. Only thing I would worry about if things are sealed like this elastic wrap, which is not sterile, but it's sealed, it'll stay in there for 15 years. Most all your bandages, as long as the packing is intact, they're all sterile. They are not going to expire. The only thing that would expire would be medications, Benadryl, or your aspirin, your Tylenol, whatever you had in there. And at least I would do it at least every year. All right. They may say it expires in 6 to 8 months. And as long as you're not leaving it in your truck in the glove compartment where it's going to get 150 degrees, that's something to consider as well. If it's someplace where the room temperature and the medicine's not going to get too damp or too hot, I see no reason why they wouldn't last at least a year. Let me add one more thing, Jane, about the cell phone situation. Um,
Mhm.
Now I got to remember what I was going to say. So, what's the next question? Then I'll think of it. Oh, no, no, no.
Okay.
Here's what it was. It wasn't a cell phone. People call in 911. People, I say, well, you say call 911. Yes, call 911. It costs nothing for you to do that. All right. It costs nothing for you to talk to a emergency room dispatcher. It costs nothing for them to send an ambulance to your site. It does cost something if you get onto that ambulance, if you allow them to evaluate you. That's where the charges start. So someone can send an ambulance, they can meet you, and the John Doe can say, you know what? Hell, I'm perfectly fine. I'm not getting in that ambulance. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Call 911. If you're scared and you need the information, call 911. That's what it's for. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Good.
No, that's great advice. Yep. Um, okay. Can you use a life straw and the life straw filter in case of emergency, or do you still need to boil it? I'm
The
pretty
life,
sure the life straw is filtered. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I may. It depends on the sediment inside of the water. I mean, they do a pretty good job, but if you start having a hard time with it clogging up, it's time to get another straw. But as far as I know, it's just as good as the boiling. Am I correct, Jane?
I
That's what
think
I've
so. Well, yeah, the filter, there's something where
read.
I don't think, I think they filter out like bacteria, but not viral,
Hmm.
from what I understand.
Yeah.
I could
I'll,
be, maybe need to be
I'll,
checked about that.
Yeah, I would
I'll jump
just
in there real quick and tell you, yes, that's true. You can also get a UV pin that goes with
Mm,
your life straw to, you filter the water and then you pin it so that it kills the virus.
good. Thank you,
yeah.
Bree.
Awesome. Yeah, I know some of this stuff I will say, like the gear questions that we've asked and water filtration. Um, Last fall, I did one of these webinars about through hiking the Florida Trail. And even if you're not planning on through hiking the entire thing, it's great to attend. It's up on our YouTube channel if you want to watch it, because we go over like gear that you want on the Florida Trail, what to know about the water sources, what to know about, and it's kind of covers safety stuff as well. So you might check that out on our YouTube. This webinar will be up on our YouTube. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all we got for today. I think this was awesome. Thank you so much, Carl, for sharing all
Thank
your
you.
nuggets
Thank
of
you, Jane. Thank you,
wisdom.
everybody. Hope to see you in the class soon.
Yeah, if you're interested, I put it in the chat, and I'll send out an email one more time. But if you are interested in taking Carl's class, I will send out a little form and just put your info in that form and
It's
to be
free.
accepted.
It's
And it's
free for
free.
FTA.
Yep, free for FTA members. All right, thank you guys so much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Bree. Thanks.
Hey, Carl, I sent you an email about the class.
Yeah, I think I've already got you registered, Eric.
Okay, I was just
Yeah.
checking to make sure I saw a note, but I couldn't
Yeah.
find anywhere where I'd gotten anything back. I just
You'll
saw a note that I had told somebody, and I just wanted to make sure that I got in there.
Yeah, I talked to Rick and you've got a spot. And I'll be sending out a welcome letter here soon about the class. So yeah, you're down. You're good, buddy.
Outstanding. Thank you. See you then.
All right, see you, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well,
I'm just letting folks filter out. Just
okay.
I don't cut anybody that needs to chat with you off or anything. Because I think when I leave, everybody goes. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Here, leave.